Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talks. I am joined by James Haeck, our lead writer at D&D Beyond, and today we're breaking down a subclass. It's actually a subclass that is a favorite of both of ours. We're talking about the Gloom Stalker Ranger.
Yes.
Joey, can you break this one down for us?
Yes, the Gloom Stalker is a very fun class, or subclass rather, for the Ranger. It is a subclass that leans into the stealthiest tendencies of the Ranger. I find that the Ranger is kind of a mash-up of fighter, druid, and rogue in various percentages, kind of a third of each. And if you want to really amp up that stealthy roguishness of the Ranger, the Gloomstalker is exactly it. We've kind of talked the last couple of weeks about stealthy infiltrator style classes with Way of Shadow Monk and Vengeance Paladin. And I think this is really continuing the trend because Gloomstalker doesn't add a lot of it certainly adds some offensive power, but it really adds that exploration stealth angle that the normal Ranger doesn't quite have. Ranger is all about overland, big picture exploration. This adds a very sort of fine-grained stealth exploration to the Ranger.
Almost to the point of philosophy. Like we see this in the spell list that the Gloomstalker gets.
Yes.
You know, once you choose to be one at third level, you're very much defined in some interesting ways by this strange assortment of spells. Because, like, again, like you said, when you're thinking about Ranger, whether you're playing the Hunter, Horizon Walker, Beastmaster, you know, you do feel like you're kind of in this niche. And I think that, as always, with any subclass, you can find yourself kind of thinking very, very narrowly based on the mechanics of that subclass and who you would be playing. I feel like the Gloomstalker kind of out of the gate here at third level, one of the spells you get is Disguise Self.
Yeah, so this is a subclass from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, a break from the Player's Handbook subclasses we've been doing because the Ranger does not have that many subclasses. And all of the Ranger subclasses in Xanathar's, and presumably onwards as more are created, get specific spells in the ways that a Cleric might for their domain or a Warlock might get from their patron. And the first new batch of spells that the Ranger gets is Disguise Self at third level, which is a kind of out of left field and awesome boon for Rangers because in their main class and even in the subclass, they don't get a lot of social pillar options. Rangers are the royalty of social or of exploration, and they've got some good combat. But unless you've kind of done something funky and invested in a high charisma score, a little odd for Rangers, you don't have very many options when the social interaction comes out, except with Disguise Self, which is a very Rangery sort of way to be doing it.
I love it because, you know, right, you've got the title Gloomstalker, and you'll see all the abilities from now on that are very ambushy. I can see the darkness. No one can see me. These core abilities, but they can make you think that you're like this creature of the shadows, which you can totally play that. Absolutely. You know, you could be
in many ways you are. Yeah,
you are. I mean, you're Gollum, right? Like Gollum is the one who hunts the orcs in the darkness.
Yeah,
that like survives.
Yeah, you're Gollum by way of Aragorn in this class. It's very funny to think of.
Right. So that very much fits, but that Disguise Self has, you know, you can play this up as kind of a trickstery vibe. You can infiltrate not because you're in the darkness itself, but because you can walk right into, say, a masquerade ball and like change yourself. You know, go into a political situation and change your appearance. Certainly, you don't have probably a high charisma, but you can always have feats that supplement. If you
the actor feat,
actor feat, as always, you know, you pop the actor feat into this and you are a very particular Ranger, right? You're like, now you have like a story again.
Yeah, well, so this Ranger, its flavor is as such. Gloom Stalkers are at home in the darkest places, deep under the earth, in gloomy alleyways, in primeval forests, and wherever else the light dims. Such Rangers are often found in the Underdark, but they will go to any place where evil lurks in the shadows. This particular disguise self, I think, is very heavily geared towards this Underdark idea. A drow Gloomstalker is, I think, the archetypal way of doing this, because not only are you constantly in shadow, not only is your dark vision, your racial dark vision, being upgraded by the Gloomstalker features to an almost comical 150 feet of dark vision. But that disguise self is very fitting with the backstabbing and courtly nature of the drow capital of Menzo Berenzin, where trust is hard to find.
That's certainly true.
Yeah. But some of these other spells are really wild too. Rope Trick is an incredible spell, vastly overpowered in earlier editions, more on the level these days. But being able to, as a ranger, just kind of tuck yourself into an extra dimensional space and peer out, kind of waiting like an anglerfish or like a trapdoor spider for your prey to walk by, and then you're like, ha, out of an interplanar rift to get them. Coupled with stuff like fear and greater invisibility and even seeming, the ultimate illusion spell at later levels, makes this a very very uniquely magical, almost wizardly sort of ambusher, which I think is a very cool bit of flavor.
Yeah, it's a fun list. It's a really strong list, and I haven't seen enough people utilize Rope Trick, but it is super powerful if you use it correctly. But you're right. Like, this is again, I wouldn't say full on trickster ranger, but it is very close.
I think a lot of people. I have seen a lot of people talk about how frustrated they are that there's no spell-less ranger option. And I don't know what will happen with the Ranger Wizards of the Coast, but I judging from the ranger that we see here, I think the goal is to lean in to the magic of the ranger, make the magic not feel like an afterthought, which is part of why people want the magic pulled out, because it kind of feels like, whatever spells. No, this ranger has a very specific and unique and highly thematically focused list of spells that makes the magic feel not like it's been tacked on, but as a core element of the class, which I think is a very cool sort of alternate way of solving that concern.
I feel like that's what we see in Xanathar's Guide to Everything for the most part. Like when you look at the Horizon Walker, this is on theme.
Yeah.
The reason that you have these abilities aren't that you are stealing from the wizard or cleric or druid or anything like that. It's because you've adapted, right? Like you have become, and I like the idea of a ranger the most in that sense that, like, you've tried to hide yourself. You become so adept at hiding yourself from existence that you have learned disguise self effectively. You've learned Rope Trick. You've learned fear and greater invisibility and seeming, because when we look at what else you get third level, you really are that trapdoor spider, like you said. Like, you are this hidden thing from
these third level
else.
Abilities are wild, by the way. Thank you for bringing these up, because I am desperate to talk about them. Go ahead and break down Dread Ambusher, which is one of the most powerful abilities I've seen on a ranger. Dread Ambusher is super cool. So at third level, you are an ambush master right from the start. You can give yourself a bonus on initiative rolls equal to your wisdom modifier. Good. You kind of want your wisdom to be your second highest ability score as a ranger, underneath dexterity. So your initiative is off the charts right now. At the start of your first turn in each combat, your walking speed increases by 10 feet, which lasts until the end of that turn. A nice little benefit. But if you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one more weapon attack as part of that action. And if that attack hits, the extra attack, not any of your normal ones, the target takes an additional D8 of damage of the weapon's damage type. It's not full-on rogue sneak attack. It's not the huge burst damage that a rogue gets, but it's a nice little push that gives you an edge at the start of a combat.
It is a rattlesnake, just curling up and biting you, right? Like, you just pop out, you move an extra 10 feet, you throw down some attacks, you get an extra attack, plus if that's the big hit. You are doing some nice burst.
Yeah.
As a ranger, on top of this, like, I imagine, if you're hiding in the shadows, if you're waiting for your moment, if you're trying to ambush someone, probably 100 hunters marked them right? Like you've already like dropped that, and so you're getting additional damage every time you hit somebody.
Yeah.
This gets a little explosive.
Yes. That is especially when coupled with the third level feature that this ranger gets, spells, Dread Ambusher, and Umbral Sight, which starts with a relatively modest, you gain dark vision out to 60 feet. Good for humans with no dark vision, but if you're already blessed with dark vision from your race, its range increases by 30 feet. So for most people, that's 90 feet of dark vision. For Drow, that's a whopping 150 feet of dark vision. Pretty great.
I love that this it became part of design, in particular with the Xanathar's Guide to Everything, is that they never want you to feel like something, if they can help it, overlaps in a meaningless way, right?
Yes.
Like, because this could have been like a real bummer for anyone who already had dark vision, but instead they decided to add to it. You know, it's like some of the Unearthed Arcana feats that we saw. Like there's, the Tandem Tactician allows you to use the help action in combat an extra 10 feet or 15 feet or whatever it is. So it can add to, say, the Rogue Mastermind's ability that does something similar.
Yeah.
They have a very keen eye on design and saying, okay, well, we don't want to nullify the bonus you already have. We're going to add to it if the situation arises.
Yeah, it's a very tight little bit of design, especially because the benefit, if you already have dark vision, isn't the full benefit, right? It's not an extra 60 feet. It's half of that. It's just a little bit of extra. So you're not, totally popping off there. But that isn't even the best part of this feature.
No,
the second part. And it says you are also adept at evading creatures that rely on dark vision. While in darkness, you are invisible to any creature that relies on dark vision to see you in that darkness. So even if you've got a Dwergar or a Mind Flayer stalking you in the caverns, and it is peering directly into the dark corner you're hidden in, it can see every rock and crevice and dark plant growing there, but you are unseen. Which is so cool. It's so cool. Like from a mechanical level, right? You're basically just getting the same benefit that normal people get against people without dark vision, right?
Yeah.
If you're a human, you're looking in a dark corner and there's just, I don't know, a fighter hiding there. They can't see you in that darkness.
Right.
But you can be hiding right there. And it feels a little bit better because it's that invisibility. It feels just a little more special.
It's a little the shadow nose, right? Like that old radio drama of like, they're right in front of your face. This is so powerful, and I feel like not only is this very obviously powerful for combat and for exactly what all this ranger is about, I think it's really fun role play wise of like describing how you move about a room.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have to the monsters are going to be making hearing checks, right? Like they're going to be like wondering what's going on, but like how fun is it? You rarely get the drop on monsters in this kind of way of like, I think there's
something
scary.
Different about having that Dwergar or Mind Flayer look into a corner and know that they can rely on their dark vision. They're like, okay, no one's in that corner because I can see in the dark.
Yeah.
But secretly, you are still there. It's mind gamey in a way. And it pairs really well if your campaign is open to multiclassing with Way of the Shadow Monk, who can just teleport between pools of darkness invisibly.
And I like that this doesn't necessarily mimic a typical spell. Like obviously maybe they'll automatically think that you just cast invisibility on yourself, but so it is wonderfully creepy. I can see it in my mind's eye where one of these monsters is like an inch away from your face just staring.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There are a lot of movies that do that. The monster's right there and you're invisible. Oh my God. It's very, very juicy.
So those two third level abilities are already like enough to dip into. I've seen a lot of people dip into Gloom Stalker for just third level because you do get a lot right at third level. I mean,
that is the danger design wise of giving all the cool stuff early, is you want the class to feel thematic.
Yeah.
But if you're playing with multi-classing rules, will your players just kind of dip in for some goodies and then continue along their way as an assassin rogue or whatever?
Yeah, it is very front loaded in the fact like, okay, you're getting disguised self. Well, that's super powerful for the assassin rogue, right? You know, and now you're completely invisible in darkness. You get this big burst damage when you initially attack. This couples very well with someone who wants to go assassin and dip into the Gloom Stalker Ranger.
Yeah.
Almost a little too well.
Yes, I think if you're a dungeon master who has allowed Xanathar's Guide to Everything and multiclassing at your table, it may be worth not necessarily like banning this, but yeah, have it be a part of your session 0. Make sure that your entire table their expectations are aligned about why you're multiclassing, right? If everyone is okay with multiclassing for raw power and build options, and that's great, you know, go ahead for it. But if you want it to be more story based, character driven, then everyone should be on the same page there too, because it's one thing if you've got, you know, a monk who multiclass into something like divination wizard or something like that because they had a vision in the stars. Like that's not mechanically too coherent, but it's a very cool story. And you've got someone else who's dipping out of assassin and into Gloomstalker, then it's like, oh well, now the party feels a little unbalanced. So just get everyone on the same page.
And again, it's that wisdom. You're able to use your wisdom modifier to add to your initiative. And Rogue Assassin is all about like if you act first.
Yeah.
So this again is a big overlap of like, not overlap. It's just it's almost too synergy. It's too much synergy for one multi-class. And I totally agree with you. I love it when people multi-class into something that makes no sense mechanically, but makes a great deal of sense for that character development.
Yeah.
I strongly kind of encourage that because often I have found some great multi-classing options and it makes the game not fun for me. So
yeah, and like this isn't bad design per se. This powerful synergy, it's not bad design. It's just there can be miscommunications because D&D is such an expansive and modular game that you want to be aware of what level of power gaming everyone is on, because power gaming isn't a dirty word. It's a mindset, and your table has to be on more or less the same wavelength.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Agreed. And so now we have Iron Mind. So
Iron Mind.
Yeah, yes. By 7th level, you have honed your ability to resist the mind-altering powers of your prey. This can very much come into, play when you're having to deal with mind flayers.
It's the Underdark stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we gain. Sorry, I was yawning at the same time. You gain proficiency in wisdom saving throws, which is fantastic. You already have, if you already have this proficiency, you instead gain proficiency in intelligence or charisma saving throws of your choice. Yeah, it's not like a super exciting 7th level ability, but it's going to keep you alive. This is the kind of stuff because, I mean, a mind flayer doesn't have to target you to mind blast an area, right? So having these kind of saves is nice, though you're right, but like actually most abilities that would target a wisdom saving throw, I feel like, or an intelligence or charisma saving throw, would require line of sight. But once you're exposed,
if a mind flayer just mind blasts in blindly, then you might be in trouble, even if it can't see you. If it's just like, I think you might be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is it's funny, all the stuff you get at 3rd and then 7th is like, you're a little tougher on the mind altering stuff. It's certainly strong.
The ability to get intelligence saves off of this is nice. Like resilient wisdom is not a bad choice for a ranger. The feat resilient wisdom, which it gives you a +1 to your wisdom score, which is a score you want already, and it gives you wisdom saves. You might choose to take that if you're fighting a lot of mages, and then that kind of gives you the option to buy into intelligence saves here, which is real mind flayer bait. If you're playing hard into the Underdark Ranger archetype here, that might be the way to go.
I totally agree. And I again, this is this nice notion of not, having this overlap that nullifies something you've done. I would totally do that because I want that option to get like especially intelligence saving throw will keep you alive in the Underdark. So I think that's the smart move, especially when you're hunting other prey and all that other stuff. I think this makes you far more deadly, a better adversary, and good at taking down spellcasters.
Yeah.
So tell me about Stalker's Flurry.
This is the ability that really cemented it for me about why I think Gloom Stalker is so cool, and it's because all of these abilities that Gloom Stalker gets are not replicable with any other class or subclass in D&D. We've already talked about things like being invisible to dark vision creatures. That's awesome. But Stalker's Fury is what cements it for me. Here's what it is. At 11th level, you learn to attack with such unexpected speed that you can turn a miss into another strike. Once on each of your turns, when you miss with a weapon attack, you can make another weapon attack as part of the same action. Super cool. Rangers get 2 attacks. They get attack and extra attack. And if you're the kind of guy to be 2-weapon fighting, you've got a 3rd attack as a bonus action. So if any of those 3 miss, then you've got a 4th attack coming right up with all of the normal benefits that your attacks would already get. Hunter's Mark, sneak attack if you're multi-classed, all of that good stuff. And this is just an awesome feeling ability, being able to mulligan one of your attacks every single turn. And it does specify once on each of your turns. So this is not something you can cheese out on opportunity attacks or stuff like that. Sentinel reaction attacks. No, it's your turn only, which I think is fine. I think that's fine.
It is one of those things. You have those kind of cinematic moments you see in anime and film where like someone does miss and they're like, oh, and then like say you swung your sword right next to somebody and it hit the ground and you just swung it back up.
Yeah.
And then like hit them from below instead.
Or it's that moment where the swordsman rushes past the other guy and swings, and the other guy's like, "Ha, you missed me." And then a second later, he slides in half because the attack actually hit after all. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Oh, that's
Fist of the North Star sort of.
A little bit more mysterious, and how you got that extra attack is really fun. Or or maybe you have a spike on the other end of your pummel.
Yeah.
But it does. Again, this is the stealthiest ranger. Even your attacks when you miss, like they don't know, like you still have an opportunity to hit them again, because they maybe didn't really react to that one missed attack. They didn't see the next one coming. It's very flavorful. It's super powerful. It's not too powerful for 11th level at all. It's just fun. It's just really cool. I do love it. And you're right. It's a very cinematic power. It's a very storytelling. Describing it. I would love to hear someone describe why they got this attack. Right.
I feel like attacks like these really can get into, just like you were saying, sort of descriptive fun. And when you've got a character who is largely martial, having that descriptive fun it can be a huge draw to the role play, because a lot of spellcasters, they have spells that spell out exactly what cool thing you get to do, and the ranger gets a little bit of that. But being able to describe your wild cinematic acrobatics when you're playing a ranger like this is kind of one of the chief draws to me. I shouldn't speak for everyone, but if I want to be a little cool, if I want to showboat a little bit, I feel like ranger or maybe like swashbuckler rogue is kind of the class to play for, and Gloom Stalker very much fits the bill.
And remember, you probably have your hunter's mark up here going on. A moment, and Game of Thrones fans, turn away if you haven't already finished the series. But there's this lovely moment where a character drops a dagger, like they get stopped. They're trying to stab somebody, and then they drop the dagger to their other hand. And it's such a wonderful move that we see multiple times in the series. And in the end, saves the universe. That's what I imagine this is.
I feel like almost more even than the assassin rogue, this is a great class for people who like the spotlight but don't like hogging the spotlight, because for vast swaths of the game you are just kind of out of the action, waiting, lurking, and then there is this huge flurry of stuff that you do, and suddenly you've saved the day, the enemy's dead, you've made 8 attacks somehow, and it's like, what was that? And you have your huge shining moment of glory, and then you're just back into the shadows and get to wait, and you get to wait, and you get to wait, and you don't have to worry about drawing too much attention to yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, like you wait for your moment, and then you're just like, ta-da! Like, you're like, I get 4 attacks. I'm done.
Yep.
Because yeah, you did take, because I see this type of ranger, like you're hiding amongst the crowd, you know, you're looking around maybe because you're using disguise self, or you've decided to use rope trick and you're gonna pop out of nowhere and attack something. So you are being quiet. You're not hogging the spotlight from your players. You fellow players, you're kind of describing like how you're setting up an ambush this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get these big payoff moments of like, I get all these attacks. And then you're like, and now I'm going to be quiet again.
Yep. The final Gloom Stalker ability is another one that I think is awesome because it's not really replicated anywhere else. It's Shadowy Dodge, the 15th level Ranger ability, Gloom Stalker Ranger ability. Mm-hmm. You can dodge in unforeseen ways with wisps of supernatural shadow about you. Whenever a creature makes an attack roll against you and does not have advantage on the roll, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on it. You must know this feature before you know the outcome of the attack roll. Very cool. It's basically getting to spot dodge. It's something that D&D doesn't do very well. It feels like an action video game where if your reflexes are good enough, you can just dodge out of the way of someone.
Yeah.
D&D is very much sort of a, it's a more like state by state game where, you know, you use your action on your turn, you dodge, and then you are dodging for the next half hour of combat, basically. Whereas here, you're kind of biding your time, waiting, and then you react and dodge, and that feels very correct to me. That feels like the way that this sort of cinematic action ought to go. But it's no very much in fitting with the Ranger. Yeah,
there's no cap. You can just keep on doing this.
Well, it does use your reaction, so it's only once per round.
Certainly, but you can do this once per round.
Yes.
So it is like if it's just you and somebody else in the corner. I don't feel like this is overly powered at all.
No.
In fact, the restriction of like, you know, what if they have advantage, this doesn't really take effect.
Yeah. I think this is actually a very interesting situation where the rules of canceling out advantage can have a surprisingly large impact on gameplay. Usually D&D is quite good about, you know, right, if you have 3 instances of advantage and even 1 instance of disadvantage, it's a straight roll. Yeah. And it's not worth fussing about it. And I think this is very cool in relation to this feature, because if your enemy has found a lot of ways to get advantage on their roll, you just need to find one little trip up to hang disadvantage on them so that you can start using this feature. That could be using your umbral sight to suddenly get invisible in darkness, right? Because even though you're invisible, your enemy might still know where you are somehow. They can use their other senses. D&D is very particular about that, right? Even if you're invisible, generally speaking, unless you have chosen to hide as an action, people know where you are because you're moving around and you know you make noise and you smell like something if you're fighting animals or something like that. All that means, if you're invisible, is that foes have disadvantage on attack rolls against you. So you can use that disadvantage on their attack rolls, just slide into the shadows, and even though they know exactly where you are, it's just enough of an edge that you are able to use that shadowy dodge feature to really put the disadvantage hurt on them.
It's a very roguish feeling Ranger.
Yeah
Yes, because I can see playing this in a very industrialized city setting, you know, in Baldur's Gate again.
We were just talking about Dishonored with Way of Shadow Monk, and this feels very much in the Dishonored vein too.
Yeah, because you're not doing sneak attack damage, but you're close enough. And you know, it does again remind me of that Batman trailer that recently came out where he just punches someone like 5 times,
right?
You know, like 12 times, you know, just to make sure they're down, I guess. And then this is kind of that ranger, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got these abilities that are super fun. They work together well. What are some interesting feats? I feel like this is one of those things you can be very optimal and get like the alertness feat. Then you have completely crazy initiative. I think that's kind of a concern because then you're always going to be the first person to act in your group, right? If you took that feat, you're just every time.
Yeah, alert feat is nice if going first is your number one priority, and because you're an ambusher, it often is.
Yeah, that's true.
This class or this subclass, I think, lends itself very well to elves. Dark elves and wood elves are great contenders for this class, which because we're pulling out the Xanathar's goods, makes them great contenders for elven accuracy, the double advantage feat, the infamous double advantage feat, really.
Pseudo triple advantage, really.
Right.
Right. Because if you have advantage with elven accuracy, that means you're rolling 2d20s, and that means you get to roll a third one.
Yeah.
As well with elven accuracy. This applies to spells as well.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Elven accuracy is a lot. There is diminishing returns on the percentage. I, however, disagree with the math of it because there are investments that you make to make an attack. If you're a warlock and you are making a ranged attack that is of a spell level, not a cantrip, it's a loss if you miss.
Yeah.
Like, it is a flat out loss. You tend not to want to do it. You tend not to want to cast something like Witch Bolt. So Elven Accuracy kind of gives you a little bit more edge there. It's still a gamble. I will say I did some evil stuff with a Trickery Domain Cleric. You do that. You pop up your Invoke Duplicity. That automatically gives you advantage on attack rolls for anyone you're fighting directly. And then I had Elven Accuracy, and then I used Inflict Wounds.
Oh, man.
And if
it hurts.
and suddenly Inflict Wounds is really effective because you're probably going to hit.
Yeah.
And you're dealing out damage that is past sneak attack damage. It's getting into Assassin.
Yeah.
As a Trickery Domain Cleric. So that's why Elven Accuracy for this is very functional.
Yeah, and because it applies to Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, you've got both of your attack modifiers going on in there. Dexterity for your ranged or finesse weapons, and then Wisdom for whatever spell attacks you might be making as a ranger. There's not many of them, but there are some, and they're good. And it gives you a bump to your to an ability score of your choice, essentially. This is just a good feat if you're an elf. An elf fits this subclass really well. So I say there's almost no reason not to be taking this.
You're kind of a nightmare with a bow as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like you've got all these stealthy abilities and being this assassin in the shadows shooting arrows. But you're right. Like the wood elf in particular, the fact that if you are like in rain or mist, you can easily kind of
that Mask of the Wild feature gets you hidden real nicely.
Yeah.
Pairing very well with Elven Accuracy. It's a bit of a feat hungry build, but if you are an elf, you get Elven Accuracy and you get Sharpshooter, the classic sacrifice 5 to hit, gain 10 to damage on every single bow attack you make if you want.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's vicious. It's vicious. You're attacking from darkness, your total cover. You're just exploding people with arrows. It's a lot to take in at once. It's worth spending 2 feats for.
You're totally right, especially with Stalker's Flurry, because if you even miss, you can make another attack. So now you're kind of like minimizing. You've totally minimized the risk. Of that particular feat by taking Elven Accuracy.
If we want to get really feat hungry, if we want to talk about a build that spends a 3rd feat, precious feats, by the way. You're an elf. You're not getting a variant human bonus feat.
No.
So you're spending 4th, 8th, and 12th level getting these 3 feats. But if you take Skulker on top of that, makes it easier to sneak around in darkness, and whenever you miss with an attack, it does not give away your position. Suddenly you shoot from darkness. No one will ever see you. And even if you are detected, you just go invisible in the shadows again. It's wild.
You're a complete nightmare. I would do it. I love feats. I take feats over ability modifiers all the time.
I think that actually makes a very strong it gives you a very strong reason to not just dip 3 levels into Ranger if you're doing this very powerful assassin / Gloom Stalker build, but actually dip a 4th level in so that you get that feat, and then go back to progressing assassin.
Well, I mean, I'd be tempted. See, this is what I like about those feat choices is I would be just tempted to go all in.
Yeah.
On this entire
absolutely.
class, like, and not lose a beat. You're right. You're like your last feat though. I mean, your last capstone is 15th level.
Yeah, so I think personally
hard pressed not to go assassin.
Yeah, I think that the last 5 levels of the Ranger class are a little bit underwhelming. There is something to be said for going for the Ranger's 5th level spells and get stuff like what's it called? Not Zephyr Strike, but the Steel Wind.
Steel Wind's well, Steel Wind Strike will get you the extra attack.
Steel Wind Strike is a wild spell, very, very fun for this. Choose up to 5 creatures you can see within range. Make a melee spell attack against each target. Each one of them takes 6d10 force damage, and then you can teleport next to any of them.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's a fun wizard power as well, particularly like if you're a blade singer. But like,
great
even
for
if
a
you're
College of Swords bard if you steal it using magical secrets. Woo!
I also like the idea of like a wizard who's just been holding back, right? Because it's not the most powerful ability, but it is very funny to think of a wizard just drawing their sword like, okay, now I'm mad. They just zoom around. It's a little in your face fighter. You know, right? Like, you don't see a fighter just randomly like popping off a fireball, right? but still, it's a very evocative spell. It's definitely one of my favorite ones. What are some unique ways we could role play this or design this beyond feats, beyond like, why are you like this? Like, you know, like why are you like a Gloom Stalker? You know, that beyond the Underdark.
Yeah, there are a lot of good motivations that you can find here, and Underdark is an obvious one, right? You're in the world of the Drow and Menzoberran's, and often male Drow, because their society is it's not my favorite D&D society, but it's this very evil matriarchal society. I think it's a bit anyway. Many male Drow find themselves in hunter mercenary kind of a subservient warrior roles, and so you may find yourself in a platoon of hunters, Mindflayer hunters or Dwergar hunters, Deep Gnome hunters. With, you know, you can be a real nasty guy who has learned to kind of be the master of the darkness, and that's great. That's a strong character motivation. You could even be a member of if you're playing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the Brigandere. Oh my gosh. If you're playing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, this is an awesome thing for you to play, because even though you're not in the Underdark, there are a lot of dark alleys in Waterdeep. Not as many as Baldur's Gate, but there are a lot of dark alleys in Waterdeep, and like Skullport, the Xanathar's lair, and there's an instant connection because of the Brigandere, the great Drow mercenary company in that adventure.
It's fun if you are of an order that is trying to hide their existence. You know, like or you've been persecuted in some way, like you just adapted to hide your existence all the time, or maybe you somehow learned to survive aboard a mind flayer ship, right? And
oh yeah,
you've been like hiding around the vents this entire time, and it kind of made you this way.
I think if you're playing an Eberron, if you are a changeling, this could be a very cool thing for you. Maybe you've grown up in a society that does not really appreciate who you are. If you've grown up in the monstrous lands of Droem, where you're just a normal person and you do not want to be caught up among the Medusas and other nasty creatures. You're just kind of hiding and lurking in the shadows. But even if you're in Sharn, the city of spires, there are so many bits of darkness in there, right? It's a very Coruscant-like city with tons of incredibly dizzying high heights and deep cavernous abysses down where the streets are grim and gritty. There's a very noir sort of class that you can play as.
there's a darkness. There's a weird narrative storytelling I might do in a Ravenloft campaign with this, and it might be a little OP, but like that notion of you're invisible. Like most vampires are probably pretty confident, I feel.
Oh, the Ravenloft opportunities here.
Right. So you're there's a vampire walking around, strutting around, and you have this sharpened stake, and you're just waiting for it to walk right into it.
A little closer, just a little closer.
Yeah, and if they get like a good stealth check, I would and it wasn't the boss villain, I would let them just one shot that thing.
What a great way to take care of a vampire spawn. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, just wait, just like I'm gonna get you.
Well, I think there are really kind of two ways of going about a Ravenlofty or otherwise gothic vampire campaign. Is it's obvious to be the bright and sunny paladin who goes for the sun sword and all of those boons, but one must remember that being that person really paints a target on your back. There is no doubt that you are getting bitten in the middle of the night as soon as all that heavy armor comes off, because you are an obvious threat.
Yeah.
But if you play the same game as the vampires and you lurk in the shadows, and you try not to make too much of a menace of yourself until it's the precise right time, that might be the way to win.
And how does that make you feel as a character eventually, knowing that you're kind of like that, you are the danger,
right?
You are, because I don't know that this something quite like this exists for a creature. I mean, obviously there's blind sight and all that stuff, but like every creature assumes its dark vision is supposed to operate normally. Like, like the fact that you have this innate camouflage is so creepy. Like just imagining you holding on to the sides of a wall or a cave, and they look up and they're staring right at you, and there's nothing. It does make you a creepier character.
Yeah, that is actually a very good point. And it's that this umbral sight ability does only apply to dark vision. If you're facing down a dragon or someone who has true sight, or blind sight or anything like that, then you are not invisible to them. They can still see you because true sight pierces all illusions. So even this ranger cannot rely upon being perfectly unseen at all times. There are enemies that will foil you. And if you're a DM, maybe you use those enemies a little bit more often.
It isn't. I mean, the one thing about the Gloom Stalker is this is a lot of you on your own stuff. So, yeah, you're invisible in darkness, but if your entire party doesn't have, isn't okay with being in the dark, if one of them needs a torch to see, it kind of nullifies some of that.
Yeah, or there's an upside to someone having the torch while you are 50 feet away in the darkness.
Fair enough. They are the target. Bit darker than I was going to go with it, James. But
come closer to my friends. Draws an arrow.
I mean, that's a very, very valid point. I think that's charming, and that makes me think of a Gloom Stalker. Like, ooh, if they get given it silent image, then I would have been like, this is the anglerfish. Like, you are creating a silent image of a creature of some light source down the way for things to pay attention to as you wait. I think silent image would have been a much darker spell choice. I think that's second level, if I'm correct, to give it than even rope trick in some ways. Like then you're really deceiving, camouflaging, luring something out. I find that very upsetting for some reason.
I think because the ranger only gets one free spell at each sort of tier in the class. I think that is actually a great way to a great starting point for talking with your DM for customizing your ranger spells a little bit, because it's only one spell. If you want to slightly tweak the Gloom Stalker, I think it's a great opportunity to set aside some time with your DM and say, hey, I really want to play this class. There's this one spell that like doesn't quite sit right with me. It doesn't quite like play to the fun I want to have. Like let's say it's I don't know what spells they have. Like fear. It's you're looking at 9th level ranger coming up. You don't want to be the scarecrow like villain who's causing fear and hallucinations. You just want to be that ninja in the darkness who is feathering people that they never see. Fear isn't really the type of spell you want to have on your list. You can say to your DM, I really just want like cordon of arrows or something like that. I want something just a little different.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I am a creature of extreme obsession. So my father is the exact same way. Like he'll like pick up an instrument and just learn it, right?
Yeah.
I'm a weekly obsession type of person, and I'm currently very obsessed with the scarecrow because I realize that the undead warlock works very well with that mentality of trying to make that scarecrow like character.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose illusion spells, if you're casting fear, every time you hit you cause someone to be frightened. And this does, someone did ask, like, what characters do you see in pop culture that would make good Gloom Stalkers besides the Dark Knight, which is pretty obvious? I'd say Riddick from the films.
Oh, sure.
He already has that kind of shine in his eyes that allows him to see darkness and himself almost seemingly completely invisible, very quick striking. It's almost purely Riddick in that sense. So I think Riddick is a good example. Can you think of one off the top of your head real quick?
For Gloom Stalkers. Oh, it's hard. It's
yeah.
It really blends with the that infiltrator archetype that we keep talking about with these most recent ones. It's always easy to think, oh, surely Batman in some way is kind of a Gloom Stalker, but we keep talking about Batman. I want to think about someone different.
Yeah, very, very, yeah. Like again, I would go into Corvo. I mean, there's lots of stealth characters that I would take a look at. We had another interesting question, which was what races and sub races would best fit practically or thematically. I can tell you it would be creepy.
Yeah,
Warforged.
Oh, like a Terminator. Yeah. Oh my God, with disguised self, this is rather T-1000, isn't it? Oh.
Especially if you're not meant to be in that universe. Like if you're a Warforged, in Faerun or Krynn or Dark Sun on Athos, in Ravenloft, there are nimble rights, there are mechanical constructs, but if you were trying to hide it, oh boy, does that make sense for you to be a Warforged Gloomstalker.
Yeah, I think there are some alternate tieflings from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes that I think would suit this class just a little bit. What one am I thinking of? I think the Glossia tiefling is quite good. Yeah. Minor illusion, disguised self, invisibility. It's almost too much of an overlap.
Yeah.
But Dissipator is also good. There's still that that disguised self overlap, but instead it gives you detect thoughts once. Very good for kind of seeking out who your prey actually is from a crowd.
Yeah, I think Bugbear.
Bugbear, yes.
I weirdly don't play Bugbears because I don't like playing hairy characters. Maybe that's because I shaved my head. I don't know. Maybe I'm hurt. But Bugbear, 10-foot reach, like you are a spider.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
and
for real.
You get that extra bonus to when you surprise attack somebody.
Kenku is almost purpose built for Gloomstalker with their dexterity and wisdom bonuses, your mimicry.
Oh, I do not like that.
Oh, it's a horrifying.
Self? No. No.
Disguise yourself as a little halfling and just listen to people, be able to mimic, steal their secrets.
When people keep on asking you questions, they're like, wait a minute, why are you answering in such a weird way? Like, they think you're just trying to be really grimdark and only give like one-word answers to things, and the whole time you got disguised self up. That's intensely terrifying.
Very creepy.
Certainly like your teammates in darkness. Again, this is a good opportunity for like a cool darkness campaign of like, this is what you guys do. You're in the shadows. Like
there's a classic D&D campaign called The Night Below for 2nd edition AD&D. It's a kind of the quintessential Underdark campaign. And I think if you were to adapt that campaign for 5e, or if you're playing Out of the Abyss or anything that's already 5e, and in the Underdark. This is almost a no-brainer. Also, I want to avoid giving any real Rime of the Frost Maiden spoilers because that is kind of the active campaign right now. And I know the players listen to this, but they're a Gloom Stalker would be quite powerful in Rime of the Frost Maiden because it's Eternal Night. It has been Eternal Night in Icewind Dale for the last 2 years. And if you're the kind of guy who is invisible to creatures with dark vision while you are in darkness, I mean, that's just the way it goes.
I mean, what if your entire family or your entire tribe are all Gloom Stalkers?
Yeah.
By necessity.
Yeah, you've all mastered the art of shadow.
And then is that very much like is it The Quiet Place? Where Krasinski is in that, you know, aliens have hit Earth and they hear all sound, and so the entire film you cannot make any sound, and it's terrifying because these creatures are all around you, and making any sound is death. So that notion of a family of Gloom Stalkers, that you were like raised this way because this is the only way you could survive in these environments, is to be invisible to dark vision. That's a very dark origin story, but interesting as well. I think Subclass as your family heritage can be very interesting, or your village, and can inform the kind of threats that you have been facing your entire life. So I think there's some interesting questions that are posed there for
you talked to me about an entire family or village mastering the art of shadow, and I just keep thinking about Naruto. Like, that's not what we're really supposed to be thinking about here. It's like, oh wow, it's Sasuke. Stupid.
So we've got about 7 minutes. If anyone has any more questions about the Gloom Stalker Ranger, please drop them in here. It is one of my favorite Rangers. I've never gotten to play it. It's my favorite just to read.
This might be my number one class to play coming up. If anyone in my group wants to do a Halloween one shot, I would love to play this character. And for all the people out there who will soon be getting another Strahd Must Die Halloween one shot, this would be an excellent choice for exploring Ravenloft.
How good would it feel just to get the one up on Strahd once because of your dark vision?
Right? Yes.
You know, like,
so
you're not
good.
Gonna survive, but it was like, I gotcha.
Gotcha. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah, I've got a character with 18 strength. I'm just waiting to get into like there's this weird moment in D&D history which maybe should or should not have happened. I'm not going to be the judge, but I read the book, and it's where Lord Soth actually gets teleported to Ravenloft and gets into a fight with Strahd. Like, they both like lock arms, and it was kind of like that Wolfman versus Dracula kind of moment of like, you know, or Frankenstein versus, you know, Dracula, where you're like, whoa, these are the two of them, some of the most powerful undead in history for D&D, and they've locked arms, and it was kind of like a fun moment of that. So like, when you can get anything up on something that terrifying, I mean, you're still going to be scared, but I think, in fact, I think the Gloom Stalker adds to your anxiety, right? Because you're
constantly looking around. I think maybe one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to the Gloom Stalker is because when I was younger, I loved playing Team Fortress 2, and in particular, I loved playing the Spy, who is a character who has a one-hit kill from behind.
He can
disguise himself as other people, and he can turn invisible practically at will. This is very Spy.
You are a terrible human being. I'm letting you know, right? I played so much. When my wife and I met, we played tons of Team Fortress 2.
Yeah.
And we hated spies. And
I wonder if I backstabbed you once, just in random matchmaking.
So many servers. I was off an engineer, and I was usually engineer and putting turrets in like really annoying places, or just being a doctor, and Megan would play a heavy. But spies were
all
fun.
Spy bait, all three of them.
Because you'd watch them. You'd watch them. You watch how people move. Yeah. But that game was so fast paced, they really didn't have the time to like, know something was wrong. But for some reason, spies got me every time. They got me every single, and I was a crap spy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no friendly fire, so there's no cost of like shooting at your friends to make sure they weren't a spy. But
yeah, so someone would just turn around and like, oh crap, I'm dead now.
But you're totally right. The anxiety, being a spy, like you feel like you're like the alpha predator, but really like you're like
your heart rate is 180 the entire time. Yeah.
You're the most scared.
Yeah, exactly.
Like and as a DM, think of all the things you can do to that player, like just a horde of like horrible monstrous creatures that all have dark vision, just a swarm of them in a cave, like just I would say like hundreds, maybe 100,000 of these monsters, and you're just there in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's a target-rich environment, but as soon as you make that first strike, they're all looking at you.
Yeah, and they're just like bumping into you. It's that kind of those moments you see in Walking Dead and zombie films where you pretend to be the zombie, and everything kind of passes you by. That's a lot of opportunity for the Dungeon Master to really mess with that character.
Oh yeah.
To put them in positions you can never put another character and expect them to live. So then you can tell this wonderful story narrative of how deadly something is.
Oh yeah.
Coming up. And use the like somebody better send you ascending, right? Like I can't talk right now.
Stop calling.
There's 8 billion giant spiders your way. I'm just gonna sit here and pee myself. What about, someone asked, what about firearms on a Gloom Stalker? I'd never do it.
Oh, no.
I'd never do it.
God, the noise alone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the DM would give people advantage on finding you, even though you are in dark vision. So.
Right, the smell of gunpowder.
There's a lot there. They see the smoke move around you. That kind of stuff. I wouldn't use. I mean, props for asking the question, but I wouldn't use a firearm.
Probably use a throwing knife over a gun.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
If you're playing in a campaign where guns are realistically lethal, then yes, absolutely. Yeah. But if they're a D&D gun that deals 2d6 damage or whatever, then it's like, I mean, stick with the longbow. Yeah.
I mean, certainly with the sharpshooter feat, then you're getting some nice damage boost. But this is one of those subclasses I do feel like I kind of fall in love with. I don't get an opportunity to play a lot of D&D that isn't my main. And this is one that's I'm sorely tempted because it just seems fun, and Sky Self gives it that little bit of extra social role playing that you tend not to get as a ranger.
Yeah, it just puts it over the edge a little bit, gives it a little extra dimension.
And at third level,
it's honestly an inspired choice. There are so many cool things you can't get anywhere else with the Gloom Stalker, and that's why I love it. But getting Disguise Self at third level feels like kind of what puts it over the edge for me.
It's kind of like the Unearthed Arcana Fey Wanderer, the fact they get mislead at level, certainly it's a 5th level spell, but like it's so appropriate and thematic for a trickster ranger.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, James Haeck is our lead writer at D&D Beyond and full of all this great knowledge. Also, he was going to have a more detailed description of how to play a Gloom Stalker and what's great about the Gloom Stalker in an article, right?
Yep, coming up later this week.
Okay. So that will be fantastic to take a look at. So if you want to watch this video and you also want to read a detailed article about this subject, I encourage you to do so. You'll get all the information you need to play a Gloom Stalker Ranger. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, James Haeck. And everyone, have a wonderful day.
See you next time.